Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. I'm so grateful that you're here watching or listening to this podcast episode. Would love for you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow and subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any future episodes and we can get this podcast out to the wider community. Today's guest is Robyn Smith. Robyn Smith is an award-winning speaker and leading trauma communication and relationship coach for women, founder of the Rock Your Relationship movement. She's helped thousands transform frustration into fulfillment by cultivating deeper, more conscious and loving connections. With her thriving 23-year marriage as inspiration, Robyn combines practical relationship strategies with emotional healing to create lasting change. Her approach goes beyond communication, reshaping how women experience love and connection. As a certified master trauma coach, she specializes in helping clients break free from trauma and unhealthy patterns, restoring harmony within relationships and within themselves. Let's welcome Robyn to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome, Robyn.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. Robyn, before we kick into some questions, I'd love to hear your story, your journey in life, in whatever shape or form you'd like to share. Where have you come from? What have you been through? What got you to this point? And to help people here.
Okay. Well, I will try to keep it brief. I will share a little bit about the trauma that got me here, since that I think it's helpful for people to understand, that, because we're talking about that a little bit today. In that, so when I was under 6 months, my parents went on a vacation, and this was the years of Dr. Spock in the late 60s. And they were told it was okay to wean me at, 5 months or whatever and leave me with the grandparents. So that's what they did, and went away for 2 weeks. And I only learned about this, I don't know, 7 or 8, 10 years ago. And then there was another time also, because of the time it was in, my mother was in the hospital for 10 days for knee surgery, which doesn't happen anymore, of course. And then they got divorced before I was 3 years old. So there was 3 early events that happened that impacted how I developed. I sucked my thumb till I was 8. I was very insecure, anxious, and just low sense of self-worth, feeling of I'm not good enough, things like this. Messages that many of us receive from the society, but also that we kind of make up on our own. Anyway, so fast forward, I got really into yoga and became a yoga instructor and teacher trainer, and did workshops and retreats and studied yoga philosophy, and was really living a pretty good life with that. But I was still having relationship challenges, and with my husband somewhat, and then in my relationship before a lot, and with friends and colleagues. So I went on to learn I thought I might want to be a coach. So I studied that, and then and I got so many tools that helped me transform patterns that I was in around my self-worth and around my emotions. I was carrying a lot of anger and fear. And so I really shifted a lot of that. So that's when I went on to study trauma and really shift my career into being a trauma and relationship coach for women. Yeah. And then the last few years, we moved to Costa Rica and completely moved our lives from California. And it was so stressful. I really believe I couldn't have done that without all the tools I had on hand, because it's a lot, a lot to move from one country to another, leave all your friends, leave your family, start over, let alone a new house. And so, I really feel like, I had a lot of resilience online to be able to handle all the stresses that continue to come from living in a foreign country and living in a, second or third country. Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a shift, right? To bring that, to create a new life and be able to thrive in what you and live life the way you want to and so on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what is it like living in Costa Rica?
Oh, it's pretty good most of the time. So like I said, it's been stressful, but I ultimately, now that we're in our home and settling, I really enjoy being warm all the time, and I really enjoy the community here. There's a lot of expats that we've befriended, and just the warm weather, the beautiful ocean, the beautiful countryside, and yeah, there's a lot that really works for us. So I'm quite happy.
That's great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Robyn, how did you decide to shift from being a yoga instructor into being a coach?
Yeah, so I shared a little bit of that. Part of it was like I love teaching yoga, but I realized even with teacher trainings and even the private sessions I was doing and yoga therapeutic stuff I was doing, helping people out of pain and whatnot, I still felt like there was more. And when I would do these teacher trainings, we would get into philosophy, and that was really impactful for people. And so I realized it's like I wanted to help people on a deeper level than I could, telling them what to do with their bodies and their breath and things like that. And I'd been studying Buddhism for a long time, and different yogic traditions of meditation and philosophy, but they only helped me so much. And when I did my coaching training and started to, work through some stuff, I realized, wow, this is what I was missing. And so I wanted to help people through those skills that I was learning. Yeah, so that's why I was kind of ready to stop teaching yoga after 18 years at the time. I'm still teaching a little bit, 30 years in, but online only. But yeah, at that point, I was like looking for a shift in what I was in my full-time work, and
Yeah.
I was.
And what was that coaching journey like for you after being teaching yoga and so on? Like, what was the transition like?
Oh, I did it slowly. So I did it, slowly cutting down my classes and slowly building up my clients, because I knew I couldn't just stop the yoga and already have enough clients. So I did that, but I just loved it. I would do workshops as well around relationship skills that I really enjoyed. And I was already a good teacher and knew how to, transmit information in an organized fashion and in a body-centered way. So I brought that into my teaching classes, and I would get clients from the classes and workshops I was doing and from my own client base of students. So it was good. I enjoyed it, and it felt really positive. And it took some time just to get to enough clients where I could really cut back the classes.
Mm.
Yeah, it was also like a process of me letting go of my identity as a yoga teacher, because I'd been in the same community teaching yoga for, 20 to 25 years. By that time, I was actually doing that. And like, oh, I'm not going to be a yoga teacher. I didn't want to disappoint my students, and they were all upset. I'm going to cut back my classes. And so it was a shift for me internally too, just to
Yeah.
let go.
Yeah, because after 18 years of doing yoga teaching, and letting that go, I could imagine that would have been um, quite hard for you to let go of it.
COVID helped a lot. So COVID was like, you know what? Like literally a week before COVID, we were going, or a week after COVID, or whatever it was, we were going to cancel our in-person classes anyway. Like I was letting go of the business. And then COVID happened, and I was like, okay, then like nobody can be mad at me. And then we just went online. Anyway, so we decided to keep teaching, but online, which actually worked for me better, because I was just done driving into town and having to I just wanted to be home more and stuff. So it actually worked really well. COVID helped me transition
Mm.
to an online business. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Robyn, what is possible when you have empowered communication in your relationship, and why is it so important?
Yeah. It's so important. And I'm so grateful that I now have that with my husband. So much as possible. For one, like a real feeling of being heard and understood. And when I speak to my clients, it's one of the main complaints, like he doesn't get me, he doesn't listen to me, he doesn't understand me. So that's a big one. When you're empowered in how you communicate, you communicate in a way that you're more likely to get heard and understood. And so you feel more connection based on that. And everyone wants connection, and a deep connection, not just to chat about the weather, but a real connection. And also what you get is a feeling like you're on the same team, like we're we're together, and that's a wonderful feeling too. I mean, I think that's why we get into intimate relationships. We want to be together, right? So that's a lot more likely when you have this empowered communication. And also it's more possibility of feeling relaxed in your relationship, to have less work and more ease. So you're not like worried about what you say and if it doesn't land right, and if they're going to get mad at you for saying it imperfectly, or if they're going to take it as a criticism or whatever. When you're communicating well and you're getting heard well, because it's not just you, it takes two. Things are you're just more ease and grace flowing through your life. You're not getting caught up in drama and arguments and all the things that are really stressful.
So if people are wondering what empowered communication is, could you go a little bit deeper into what empowered communication means?
Yeah. You know what? I just made that up recently and it made so much sense. Because it's already something I teach. I just realized, wow, this is an empowered way to communicate. It's really, so when we speak about empowerment, it's like when you're in your power, you know who you are, you know your value, and you communicate that. And so, like, you could say, not letting people walk all over you, not kind of suppressing your values or your needs or your worth or your feelings or your words in order to get liked or to get approved, or these types of things that people do, and especially women tend to do. So when you're in your power, you're just owning your value, you're owning who you are and what you need and want, and you're speaking about that, in an honest, authentic way. So that's kind of what comes to mind with that.
Yeah. And it's so important to be connected authentically and empower each other and build each other up. And so many relationships where it's almost they're working against each other, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main communication pitfalls that you see in your client with your clients?
Yeah. Well, ones that I grew up with and that I had in my own life. So blame is a big one. And I think, just to say that I don't want to blame anyone for having these, right? Because I think we grow, like I did, we grow up with this in our culture. It's just popular. It's what gets passed down, in your household. So blame is sort of like pointing the finger, like who left the lights on, who left the food out, who didn't do their homework, And so whenever you're looking for fault, pointing the finger, that's blame. And nobody likes to be blamed. So if you're a blamer and you use a lot of you statements, then you're likely to get people coming back at you either with, I didn't do it, you did it, a counterattack. Look, someone blames you back or criticizes you back, or is just getting defensive. And trying to like, it wasn't me, so I just named them all then. So there's blame, criticism, and defensiveness. So criticism, the second one is when you're attacking someone's character, personality. You're saying, you're bad, you're wrong, you're stupid. How could you be so, rude, or whatever you're doing? You're attacking someone's character. And so again, if you do that, like you say, it's breaking someone down instead of building them up. They're gonna either attack back or get defensive back or withdraw, shut down, pull away, create distance. So these are why they're pitfalls, is because no one likes to receive these types of communication, and people are going to pull away and ultimately have more distance in the relationship when they really want connection. So the third one, defensiveness, has the same type of response. If you start defending and like, I didn't do it, I don't know what happened. If you don't really take ownership of what you did, and then people are gonna, pull away. Like, that doesn't feel good. Like, just if you're late, own it. You're late. Don't make up a bunch of excuses, or don't say someone made me do it, or unless it's true. But so yeah, it just causes like a contraction and like I said, like a shutting down or a pulling away. So those are problematic if we keep that going.
Yeah. So authenticity is so important, being authentic. and responsible for your actions, right? It's important. I have another question around this. So, how does mindset play the role in communication?
Mindset. Well, I think we've been talking about that a little bit. Like mindset could be, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, people aren't nice. We could have thoughts or beliefs. I think of mindset as like beliefs that you're carrying that drive your behaviors, so to speak. So your beliefs could be about yourself or about somebody else or about all people or the world. And so that you asked how it affects your communication. Is that what you asked? Yeah, so that's going to greatly affect your communication. So if you feel like let's go back to the I'm not good enough or nobody likes me, things like that are really common. If you believe I'm not good enough, then that'll affect how empowered you are, right? You're gonna it can have like two outcomes. One is you overcompensate, like the small guy with the big truck type of thing, or somebody who's trying to like look really successful when they're not, so there can be that. When you don't feel good about yourself, you try really hard to do the opposite, to appear, to get approval, because you don't have it, from yourself. Or you do the opposite. You kind of stay small and you act small and you diminutive, oh, is it okay if I don't know, but, and like really hesitant to say what you need, or like, oh, whatever you want's fine with me. And you just go with everybody else, but you don't really state like who you are and what you feel and believe and want. And so those are some examples of like that mindset of not good enough could affect how you show up in relationships through your communication or your actions.
Yeah. Do you feel that a lot of this comes from the trauma that we've gone through in our lives?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I shared that in my story.
Yeah.
Yep.
So could you give us some examples of the types of trauma that might impact someone's ability to communicate in an empowered way?
Yeah, you bet. I'm going to share a few examples. So one is if you had a caregiver that didn't know how to really attune to you. Attunement is like you're a baby crying and your caregiver comes over and like, why are you crying? Like, and they're, even though they don't necessarily know why, they try to figure it out, right? Because you can't tell them why. You're just crying. But they do their best to make you comfortable, to feed you, to burp you, whatever it is. So that's attunement. And it's also like eye contact and like playing, and being responsive. So if your caregiver didn't do that or didn't know how to do that well, like was distracted or didn't make eye contact, maybe your caregiver was like, on the phone and like, here, baby, like watch the screen over here or whatever, they're not like giving you the attention you needed. Then what can happen? So that's an example of an early trauma that can happen. And just to back up and say, these types of trauma are really prevalent. And we don't have to blame anybody. Again, it can get passed down, and you don't have to be there doesn't have to be malintent like other types of trauma, which are much more grave, like sexual or physical abuse. This is not in that category, but it's still traumatic, and it still greatly affects your development, your nervous system development, your sense of self, and things like that. So anyway, you asked for different types of trauma that might impact your ability to communicate. So this misattunement can lead to a sense of like, okay, I'm not getting my needs met. People don't care about me. They don't know how to respond to me when I call out. And it's really painful to feel that. It's sort of like, I don't matter. And so instead of feeling that, I'm going to overcompensate and be the one to take care of you. So instead of feeling not taken care of, I'll get connection through being the caretaker. And so then what happens is you're the one who's the need provider, always saying, how can I serve you? And not putting forth your own needs, not being willing to receive, always being the giver, and then eventually the overgiver. And the burning out, resentfulness, things like that. But you do that to feel valued, because it's better than feeling neglected.
Mm.
Do that to stay connected instead of neglected. So that's one example how trauma can impact your life, your sense of self, and then of course your communication, because you're going to be suppressing your needs and expressing those needs. I have many clients who deal with this. This is really common with women. It's not okay, because if I say my needs, like I want you to talk to me, or I want you to care for me, or whatever that need is, I want to get a raise, or whatever it might be, in whatever context, you're afraid of rejection. And rejection feels like abandonment, like you're going to lose the relationship if you say your needs. That's what it feels like, even though it's like, may not happen, but feels like that. So there's this suppression, like, I'll just be good, I'll just be nice, I'll just be agreeable, and then stay in like connection, not have to feel the rejection, the pain of that. So you've already felt that. Okay, a second one is neglect. So there can be, especially in the earliest time of life, in the womb and through the first 6 months, if you, it's not necessarily only neglect, but if you weren't wanted, if your mother tried to abort you, or you were given up for adoption, or there was any kind of really heavy trauma in that part of your life, whether it was, again, on purpose or not, you could feel like you're not supposed to be here, like it was hard coming into the world. I shouldn't be here. I'm not worthy. So that impacts your sense of self again, and you might really want connection, but connection again feels really terrifying. Like it can feel like, again, like a kind of rejection. And there's an anxiety about that. So this is a person who might more likely withdraw and be avoidant, be the person who shuts down more, who like, okay, I'm just not going to get involved. I'm not going to stay in relationships. I'm not going to go towards intimacy because it's too terrifying. It brings up that feeling of like, I could get seriously rejected again. So it's a little deeper, older type of trauma. And the third is like, if you say those things didn't happen to you, but what did happen is your parents were really harsh with their punishment, and really strict with you, and you weren't really allowed to be who you are. You were, told to be this way. You can't be that way. You can't be a ballerina. You have to be a football star or whatever. You have to have straight A's. You have to put on ribbons and dresses because that's what we think you should look like. So you weren't allowed to have your self-expression, your autonomy. So you kind of suppress that. And then you end up feeling angry, and also like you to say, so because you had to do that as a child because you don't have any power, you don't have autonomy, and you had to do that to stay connected to your caregivers. But later in life, if you're still doing that, you're saying yes instead of saying no. You're not, again, putting forth like what's important to you, and then you end up being a people pleaser. So the people pleaser keeps saying yes, keeps over delivering, trying really hard to stay connected, and doesn't have authentic relationships because you do what you think people want from you in order to have the relationship, instead of being yourself to have the relationship. So your relationships are based on whatever mask you've got on, whatever concepts you have on around what people want you to be. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I've seen those things happen in my life in the past. So it's interesting. It's given me some insights as to what had happened. Yeah. So what are the three most important to address when your early trauma is impacting your ability to feel empowered and to express yourself with confidence?
Yeah. So 3 areas are self-worth, unresolved emotions, and your old beliefs and fears.
Mm.
So your self-worth, we've been talking about a little bit, those concepts of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable. So if you don't address that, say you get a whole bunch of great relationship skills, which are out there, but you still feel not enough, then that's still going to drive how you show up in the relationship. You're still going to maybe try to be a people pleaser or overgiving or diminishing yourself. So you need to address this core element. And so I work with, like I said, a lot of women individually, and I have groups, and this is one of the pillars in my group courses is like, let's get this addressed. And I worked with it a lot with myself because it was a big issue for me, as I stated. So I've helped a lot of women with this issue. And so once you do that, once you learn to accept yourself as you are, I know that you're a work in progress and you're not perfect, and you're allowed to make mistakes, and you're allowed to be who you are, and you really learn to accept yourself, then you can come from a different place inside yourself and your relationships, and you don't have to try so hard to be liked and to like be approved and all those things we've talked about. And you get to relax a lot more and have a better time. And you're not as anxious about, what do people think and stuff like that. So that's a really important one for healthy relationships. Yeah. And then this unresolved emotions one, again, as I shared in my own story, like I had all this suppressed anger. I didn't realize, I didn't even think I had any anger because I was a yoga teacher. And I was like, oh, anger's bad, but we all have anger. And we all have all the emotions. And so when you can own your anger and your sadness and whatever other emotions are there, befriend them and also work through them. It's not driving you so much. You're not acting out on yourself or on others. Again, you're going to be able to be more present, make a better connection with people, be less reactive, more responsive. Your communication will be better heard and understood. People will want to hear you more instead of when you're like, I did a lot of like kind of daggers at people, I didn't even realize I was doing. It's criticizing and nagging and just different stuff out of this old anger. I didn't even know was going on in there. And then thirdly, this fear and old beliefs. So we talked about old beliefs already that could be running the show. And then a lot of that is connected to fear. Like, I'm not good enough, and if I don't get better, I'm going to be abandoned. So I think all of us have a deep fear of abandonment and rejection. It's like a core wound, and it's part of human. We're tribal cultures, so the biggest punishment in the tribal cultures was to ostracize somebody, right? So that's like in there, like I have to have community. I have to be around people. So it's a fear of not having that. But anyway, when we can work through some of those fears and like trust that we can connect to new people if we lose our old people or whatever it is, then again, we can state our needs better. We can state our boundaries better. When we really like trust more in ourselves and unlock some of those negative self-harming beliefs, we can be more at ease inside and then value ourselves. It really is connected to the self-worth piece that I was talking about before. So, speaking of truth.
Yeah. I was going to ask you a question. So something that I've experienced in the past, and also friends who've been in the dating scene, right? And when you're in an established relationship, you kind of know that you're both, well, that you're both with each other and so on. But in the early stages of dating, when everything's up in the air and you don't, and you might like someone and the other person might like you as well, but you still don't have the clarity around, especially with the communication, and whether someone if the communication is not constant, then
Yeah.
how can what's some steps that people can take, and what are the things to do to help yourself, I guess, in that way?
Yeah. Well, thanks for your question. So I'll just say, first and foremost, I'm not a dating coach, so I might not have it all off the top of my head, but I have some ideas for you. and I haven't dated in a long, long time. But I get the challenge that can come up around that and what you say around like lack of communication and how, that can be anxiety provoking, and especially if that's already an issue for you. So a couple things come to mind for me, and this is inspired by, I remember meeting somebody when I was in my mid to late 20s, and she was in her early 40s, and she was talking about dating and like, being so forthright, like, look, I'm 42, I want to have a kid. Like, are you my guy? Like, no, there's no time to waste here, and I really appreciated that. Like, and it's like, whoa, that's intense, but also like, let's cut through the crap, like, why not put it out there? You will learn a lot about people, especially if you're in your 40s and 50s. There's not a lot of time to mess around. We don't know. We never know, obviously. But it's like when you're authentic without being harsh or, and too intense or whatever, you're just honest, then you're going to find people who can meet you there, who like that. And if you scare someone away with your honesty, well, that's probably a good thing, because they're not up for that, and I think early signs, if someone can't be in communication with you, then maybe take that as a sign. Like if they're not that into you, or they're not giving this relationship as much priority as you want to give it, there's some early signs there. And, I'm not saying, maybe that's not personal. Maybe they've got a lot of drama in their life or whatever stuff going on. But I think it's good to be forthright. Like, hey, I'm really into you. I want to give this a shot. Like, are you interested in that? Like, I think we have some great potential here, and that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, because often I think, and this happened to me in the past, and I've spoken to a couple of people, especially a couple of clients that I coach, and where they've 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 felt that sort of that they're people pleasing, and
Mhm.
by asking that they're scared, by asking that they feel that like they're going to be people pleasing and so on. Mm.
Yeah, I didn't totally follow. You're saying they're asking the other person if they're going to be a people pleaser?
No,
Uh-huh.
so pe they've to ask to ask someone how they're feeling, or what the communication side of it, it may come across that they're being a people pleaser.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, but I think it's really helpful to ask a lot of questions. What are your beliefs? What are your desires? What are you scared of? And I think it's helpful to continue doing that through your relationship.
Mm.
Totally an open book with people, to, with the right people at the right time, not with everybody, of course, but with people you feel safe with. So, safety is important first and foremost. You're not going to divulge all your secrets to somebody you just met, but once you feel safe, like they know how to hold you, they know how to respect you, you know, things like that. Once you get that seems to be happening, then, sharing yourself, asking them about themselves, I think is important to get to know who this person is and whether it's a fit.
Mm. All right. So what are three tips that you can offer to our listeners today, in terms of communication?
Yeah. I have some simple tips here that are sort of groundwork, setting the tone for healthy communication. And so first one is eye contact. And that is so important. Like I was saying, when you're an infant, but it doesn't stop being important, even though it's tricky in our modern age. We're on the phone, a lot more and whatever. We're on Zoom where the camera's here and the screen's down here. So we do our best, but the eye contact helps you feel like, okay, you're with me, you're doing your best to pay attention, to you care, you're interested, things like that. So without that, it's really hard to know if someone's following you, if they're walking away. Hold on, I got to blah blah blah. Oh, let me get this call or whatever. There's a disconnect in in the interaction. So it's hard to feel like you're like you got connection, like you're being heard.
Yeah.
Okay, second one is consent, and consent is a good thing. And I'm happy it's getting more talked about. It's more of a buzzword these days. But consent is really like asking someone for permission in a way, but for their buy-in. It's like, are you available to have this conversation right now? Hey, I want to talk to you about something that happened today. When's a good time? Or, and so you're not just like bombarding someone with, hey, you got to like take all this stuff right now. And they're walking in the door from a huge day at work and they're overwhelmed already, or they're drained or exhausted or already got a lot on their minds. So you want to have an important conversation. You want someone to be available physically, energetically. They've got energy. They're not going to fall asleep on you. Mentally, their brain's not full of other stuff that they're processing already because of whatever something else happened. Emotionally, and mainly those things. Time-wise, they have this time for it. So when you get consent, you're like, I need about a half hour to talk with you. When's a good time? Then you're setting the stage again for a better conversation to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the third one is reflective listening. So that's something where you might repeat back a little bit of what you heard. Okay, so what you're saying is, so maybe you're summarizing what somebody said, or what I heard you say is that true? Did I get that right? So you're reflecting back so that you can make sure you are hearing and understanding, because sometimes we think we are, but we all know we've had those experiences like, whoa, that's not what I said at all. But when you check in about it, like, am I following you? And then I could say, actually, no, let me get that straight. I'm glad you asked. You're just, again, going to have a much better feeling of knowing, one, they care enough to check their understanding, and two, like, you're more likely to, again, get heard and understood. So those are three really good practices to bring into any conversation.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure those tips are going to help people. So before we kick into the quick fire questions, if people were interested in connecting with you and maybe getting some help for you, how could they connect with you?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of channels. My website is robynsmith.net, so Robyn with the Y. And you will find ways to connect with me there. And then I have all my little things on the top, the YouTube channel, and I highly recommend that. I've made a lot of videos over the years, and they're all trauma informed and, communication skills and different skills for relationships. So check out my YouTube channel. I have an Instagram that I haven't used a lot lately, but I have a lot of videos on there that are very good. So Anthony will have the link. And I have a Facebook group for women called the Rock Your Relationship Sisterhood, where I also share videos and training and answer questions. So it's a good place to connect as well. And I think you've got the checklist link. So if people sign up for my checklist, they're going to get on my email list, and you'll get updates from me and relationship tips that I send every week. So we can talk about that checklist a little later, or now, whenever you think. But yeah, those are some channels.
Yeah, so we'll put those links into the podcast description so that people can click on it. Did you want to share a little bit about the checklist now?
Yeah, I love this checklist. So I put a bunch of time into it. It's called the Ultimate Communication Checklist, and it's literally probably takes about 2 minutes to read it. And it's a checklist of like, are you doing these things in your communication? And then so you can check off like, okay, I'm doing well, or I'm not doing well in my communication. And if not, there's a tip under each one. So you can grow, you can have some support through the checklist as well. So I highly recommend that.
Okay, awesome. We'll put those links into the podcast description. Right, let's dive into the quick fire questions. So first question is, how do you define success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
That's great. Yeah, I would say so. I think what I define success as being happy, healthy, thriving in life, loving life. I don't think it has to do with money at all. If you have to work great. If you love to work, great. I think success is also about loving what you do with your time. So if you're working, you should love your work. It should be fulfilling and rewarding. So I think those are part of success. And I don't even think success has to be in a relationship. Some people are really happy solo. Great, if that's you. So, yeah.
Nice. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
I've had many teachers over the years. Well, I'll name two of my teachers, who are great teachers and written a lot of books. I'm not doing as much with their work as I used to, but they're Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. And so they've written a ton of books, and they're a couple who's, really living a conscious lifestyle and sharing amazing work in the world. So I would recommend them to people. And also, they've been an inspiration to me. Yeah.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that you have to totally love yourself before you can love another person. And that's been a common, I don't know if it's a myth, but a common saying. And what I found in myself was I wasn't loving myself very much at all when Patrick, my husband, came into my life. And he helped me love myself, and he helped me see my value. And so I don't think it has to go, in the direct line, like love yourself first. I think you can learn to love yourself through being loved.
What if you could go back to your younger self and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Piece of advice. Have more fun.
Yeah.
As you get older and more serious.
Yeah.
Because I had fun as a child, but yeah, just remember to keep having fun.
Keep having fun. Absolutely. And, it's like they say, we've got to, sometimes we've just got to get back to our childlike self, because that's, it's you're going with the flow, you're just having fun. Exactly. What is one last message that you'd like to share with the world?
I would like to share that, even with a lot of trauma, you can heal. You can get support if you get the right support. You can get to a place where you're more relaxed, more at ease in your being, less anxious, less depressed, whatever's going on for you, more able to connect with people, more able to feel life is good, have a good life. And so I really want to put a stake in the ground for people to get the support they need, because I think most of us have had some types of trauma, and more than one. Many people have had more than one kind of trauma in their lives that hold them back, whether they have a drug addiction, a food addiction, or, they just don't know how to stay in a relationship. There's so many things that can happen that get in the way of thriving and, living a successful life, so to speak. So get the support you need, and to have the life that you deserve.
Absolutely.
Good life, sir.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, Robyn, for joining us on this podcast interview. I really appreciate you joining us all the way from Costa Rica. And if you've been watching this podcast episode or listening to this, and you're inspired, or you've got some insights and you want to connect with us, please connect with Robyn or myself, and share this episode with your friends, your family, your workmates, or someone who would benefit from it. Share it on your social media, tag us in, and we'd love to see your comments. And also, if you haven't already followed or subscribed, please follow or subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. And I would lastly like to say, you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness. Have an amazing day.